Limbic System Reset. When you are in a limbic system trauma loop, it is common to experience feelings of dread, worry, panic, fear, anger, resentment, anxiety, helplessness, or sadness. Repetitive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all symptoms of the loop itself, which is the root of much of the body's physical trauma. With this clearing, Jeff puts the body back into its own original state and blueprint. So, without further delay, thank you, Jeff.
Energy work, energy medicine perspective. That's where I'm coming from. The limbic system itself, when you have a client that is exhibiting certain problems, there's a high correlation that it's a limbic system issue, such as multiple chemical sensitivities, walking down the aisle at the grocery store where all the detergent is can send some people out of this world. I mean, it drives them crazy. That's multiple chemical sensitivities. The other one is chronic fatigue syndrome. Anybody suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome usually has a limbic system issue. Fibromyalgia, that's a limbic system issue. Depression, anxiety, and PTSD are all associated or caused or triggered or aggravated by a limbic system issue. So for our purposes, what we're going to work on tonight, talk about tonight, I'm limiting it to 4 areas. First of all is the amygdala. That is your emotional learning and responding. And the amygdala processes survival energy and related information and encodes emotional memory. It's also the fear center of the brain, and it responds immediately. When you're in a fear state, the amygdala kicks in right away. The next piece is the hippocampus, which is for basically your memory. And the hippocampus processes and stores information and assigns value and meaning to information coming in. And chronic stress decreases neurons and size of the hippocampus, which in turn causes short-term memory problems. And then 3, stress hormones inhibit synaptic function and neuronal growth. The next piece is the hypothalamus. This is basically your drive and your ambition. This links the nervous system to the endocrine system via the pituitary gland. It is the health managing system of the body. It regulates homeostasis or stable state of equilibrium. It generates behaviors on eating, drinking, sensory alertness, energy levels, rage and aggression, embarrassment, escape from danger, and pleasure and sexual arousal. And it's also the center of brain hormones. This is where hormones get generated in the brain. And the next piece, which was not mentioned in this, but it is very important in energy work, is the cingulate gyrus. This is your pain and your emotion center. It is associated with pain and emotions, mediates response to noxious stimuli, involved in processing pain and perceived pain, serves as the inhibitory gating function on fear conditioning by the amygdala. And if it's not functioning, all negative stimuli enter the brain. When the cingulate gyrus is off, a person can just walk around in a constant state of fear. Fear about everything, panic about everything, worry about everything. I call it a syndrome of worry, and I have a whole protocol just for that. So it's really important to have the cingulate gyrus working and functioning in unison with everything else. This is also where you will get things like obsessive compulsive disorder, counting things. When you leave the house, it drives you crazy because did I leave the stove on? I'm sure I left the stove on. I hope I didn't leave the stove on. or things of that nature, or folding things over and over and over. Obsessive compulsive disorder takes on many, many flavors. Now I have a client who is an emergency room doctor down in Austin, Texas. And for him, obsessive compulsive disorder works well in his business because he's very successful. But when he goes home, he can't turn it off. And that was a problem for him. Okay, so those are the pieces. Now, why is this important? Well, first of all, how do we get there? How do we get there? So this is the four pieces: the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the cingulate gyrus. And these should have solid connections with solid communication in a certain order. But shock, panic, and trauma causes a cross-wiring to be in here and causes communication failure between the main connections between these four pieces and disrupts the system. It is a system. They all have to operate in unison together. But when you get cross-wiring between these pieces rather than direct communication in the right order, this is when everything goes wonky and you get into trouble. And that's caused by shock and panic and trauma that triggers a cross-wiring of these systems or these individual pieces in a system. That can be any number of things. That can be childhood trauma. That can be trauma that's still stored in the body that's coming up to be addressed or released. That can be the fear narrative that we are constantly being bombarded with in this world. It can be the chaos sorcery that we are constantly under in this world. That can be black magic sorcery that is everywhere. That can be some type of possession, can trigger this kind of stuff as well. No matter what kind of entity it is, whether it's a cloned entity all the way up to a demonic entity, it can damage this order and this connection and cause all kinds of severe problems. Well, some of the main problems, and I'm telling you, these are serious. These get serious real fast. Is basically the first one that I find very often is a trauma loop. And a trauma loop is repetitive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that you just can't let go of, no matter what you do, no matter how much you meditate, no matter how much you walk in the woods, no matter how much you drink, no matter how much cocaine you snort, or however you self-medicate, how much food you eat or whatever. A trauma loop, when it is stuck in the hypothalamus and the hippocampus, the cingulate gyrus, and the amygdala, it just goes and goes and goes and goes. It doesn't stop. And sometimes, you just got to go to sleep and sleep it off, and hopefully it resets itself. But these trauma loops are typically focusing on dread, worry, panic, fear, and anger. So if you're mad at somebody, you're mad at your spouse, you're pissed off, you're upset, they've bent you out of shape, you can get stuck in a trauma loop and you experience all those, especially anger. So even though the situation seems simple enough, it seems calm enough, you think you're at peace, you think you've got the situation handled, but as long as this trauma loop is running, buddy, you are sensitive. I mean, like a raw nerve right on the surface, right on the surface. So what happens is also, if these trauma loops run long enough, you get into a condition called pathways of the past. Now, this is very interesting when I discovered this. A pathway to the past, or pathways of the past, is the body reacts in survival mode before the brain can filter sensory information. What does that mean? Well, normally something happens, and then you have a thought about it, you have a feeling about it, and if it's severe enough, you can have an emotion about it, and then you have a reaction to it. So the normal process, the way we are to function, the way we are supposed to function, is you have a thought, feeling, emotion, and then a reaction if it's reasonable to do so or required to do so. Okay. But what happens when you're in pathways of the past, the body reacts in a survival mode first. The body does. You don't have a thought. Your body goes into panic immediately. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are sitting at your desk and a storm's coming. You can hear it at your window, and in your bedroom down the hall, you've got a window open and the storm's coming. Normally, what you would do is say, well, I need to walk down the hall and shut that window so my carpet doesn't get wet. Okay, that's a thought, feeling, emotion reaction. Storm's coming, you have a thought to it, you have a feeling about something you probably need to do. The emotion is one of action, and then the reaction is to get up and walk down the hall and shut the window. Okay. When you are stuck in pathways of the past, your brain does not work correctly. And what will happen is storm's coming, and you notice that as a separate item. The storm comes up, the wind blows in your window down the hall in that bedroom and slams the door. And so what happens immediately to that? So an event happened, thought, feeling, emotion, action, but an event happened. And in this case, you have a reaction. The body reacts, goes into survival mode immediately. And then when that happens, if you're fortunate enough, or if you can calm down enough, or you give it a moment, then you can have a thought. Now, to you and I, thinking logically, we would think, oh, storm, slam the door, blah, blah, blah. But because the body reacts first, you go into panic mode. The brain cannot filter or censor or filter the sensory information that's coming through the whole situation. Storm comes on, door gets slammed, and your body goes into a panic. And then guess what? Because your body is in such a panic, the first thought you have is, oh my God, Jason Voorhees is in my house and he's coming down the hallway to machete me to death. That's what happens. Your body reacts, and then you have an irrational thought because you've not censored out the information, or you've not processed the sensory information appropriately. So just out of curiosity, how many of you get the reference to Jason Voorhees? Huh? Okay, good. I was worried about that. So most of you have all seen that series of horror movies. All right. That's a problem. That's a problem because you're not dealing with reality. That's not reality. Your body has become your mind. Your body is running your life. It being stuck and having sensory overload is now determining your response, your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and ultimately your actions. So your body has become the mind. That's incredibly, incredibly destructive for us when the body is the mind. So that's a trauma loop that's linked to pathways of the past. And when somebody is in that state or condition, you may think of them as, oh, he or she is illogical, he or she is hyper emotional, he or she, just doesn't understand me, he or she doesn't see me or know me or knows anything about me. And that's because that person is not responding to you or the situation. Their body responds first and becomes the mind, and then they act irrational. So that's what this gets you in trouble. That is some serious issues right there. Why is this important to deal with? Well, first and foremost, when your body is the mind, it creates a condition called chronic stress alarm. Hypervigilance is what that is. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're always waiting for the person to attack you or be attacked. You just do not have a rational response to the world. Your boss will call you up, or he'll have a secretary call you up and say, so-and-so wants to meet with you at 1 o'clock today. And the first thing that goes through your head is, holy shit, I'm getting fired. What he really wanted to talk to you about was the budget report. But you go way off the charts and have a massive overreaction because the body is the mind. The next thing that it can lead to is a chronic inflammatory cycle. Stress and overwhelm causes inflammation in the body. And the number one cause of illness, sickness, disease is inflammation. That's true for heart disease. That's true for cancer. That's true for everything. You get inflammation going on in the body, then the body cannot repair itself appropriately. Then illness and sickness can take hold and create disease in the body. And this is especially true. I've had quite a long conversation with my cardiologist about this, about inflammation. Inflammation is the root of the root of the root for all cardiological issues. Okay, inflammation. And in this case, because I keep asking him, well, where does it come from? What's producing it? What's happening? Why can't you address the inflammation? It's coming from pathways of the past and trauma loops that keep a chronic inflammatory cycle, because the body goes into inflammation stage because it thinks that you're under attack. And it thinks that you need to be in a healing mode constantly, or in a self-healing mode constantly. And that's what the inflammatory cycle is. Inflammation is a good thing at times, but when it doesn't back off and stop, that's when it becomes a big issue and causes chronic disease and illness. And a bigger issue is you get stuck in neural circuitry. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So if you have these thoughts, these repetitive thoughts, those neurons are firing, boom, 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 all the time. And then you continue to have the same thoughts, no matter what you do. You fix a situation, you change jobs, you get rid of your spouse and get a new one. Whatever it is you do, whatever it is you do to accommodate it, it doesn't work because you still have stuck neural circuitry going on in the neurons of the brain. So I hope you can see now how important the limbic system is because of all the things it deals with.
Educate, empower, and enlighten your soul, and get these weekly clearings and much, much more by joining the Soul Warrior Network at the Institute for Soul Evolution.com. Until next week, love and blessings.